What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Phightin Words. Anthony SanFilippo is back from Pittsburgh. Glad to see he made it, man.
Yeah, that's one thing I've decided now, Bob, or I at least have to think about. This season, I've now attended 7 road games to cover the team. They won their first one. It was opening day down in Washington. They've lost the next 6, all 3 in New York against the Mets and all 3 in Pittsburgh. So I'm starting to wonder if I'm the problem.
So what are they? They're 14 games over when you're not covering them on the road? Is that the?
That's right. Yeah, that's what it is. Here? Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, it's not great. I've actually been getting DMs. I'm glad that I've become like the hype man for like the get angry, let them have it. Like people are like, I can't wait to hear you rip them to shreds. Like, I don't think I'm that guy, but apparently I'm being received as that guy all of a sudden. There's so much to talk about this morning with where they're at, and none of it is good. I mean, really, almost none of it is good. And Anthony, I guess my question to you off the top, in the spirit of trying to do something a little bit different, I've heard some of the conversations on the radio this morning. Let me just ask you this. It seems to me like people in this city are kind of over this team. And when I say over this team, not just doubting its ability to win and win in October, but maybe a little bit over each of these players and some of their shortcomings on an individual basis. And I uttered the phrase last week, familiarity breeds contempt. And do you think that this really is a matter of people are just sort of over some of these guys on an individual basis? Or do you think it's more of an assessment that this team just isn't good enough?
I think that there's a lot that goes in. It's kind of a heavy question, right? I mean, I think that there's a lot of reasons that people feel that way or feel a certain way about players. I do think that we're in a generation where people want constant change. They don't want the same thing over and over again, even if it's successful. They want change. So I think part of it is that it's a shorter leash now than it ever was before. So I do think that's part of it, but I do think that, that when things go bad, you see that it's the same culprits that are at play, and you can sit there and go, all right, I've had enough of this guy. Even if that guy kind of turns it around and has a good run. And I think like a perfect example of that is a guy like Alec Bohm, right? Who the fans in this city have had a on again, off again relationship with for various reasons, and deservedly so in some spots. The guy got off to a terrible start. First 2 weeks of the season, he was awful. But then the next 6 weeks, he was really good. And you kind of meandered through it, kind of waiting for the next downturn. And he might be in the midst of that next downturn. And now you're right back to where you were in the first 2 weeks of the season. Just because again, like you said, the familiarity breeds contempt. It's like, well, we've seen this before. And I think that kind of thing is what happens. And
I will tell you, I mean, I will say this. I've gotten to a point and you're starting to look at the statistics across the board and guys underperforming left and right, and nobody can seem to step up in a big moment and deliver. I watched the game yesterday. You get to the 9th inning, they walk Schwarber, and you're putting the go-ahead run on base in the 9th inning to get to the team's cleanup hitter. Like it's so disrespectful, but it was the obvious baseball move if you're the Pirates. And what does this guy do? He comes up and he does exactly what everybody in the tri-state area who was watching the game expected him to do, which was hit into a double play. And not only does he hit into a double play, but he does it on the first pitch. Like, it is just a microcosm of what he is, his inability to deliver in big spots, his inability to be the player that this team needs him to be the middle of the order presence as a corner infield bat. Like, it just doesn't play. And we've talked about this a lot over the last week and a half about the fits. And is it really about the individual player, or is it more about how all of these guys and their flaws, their shortcomings all fit together, which exacerbates this frustration and this feeling like, man, it isn't good enough. And the most obvious part of the equation is that it's the same team as last year. And there's been a lot of disappointment that this team carries. They've delivered in stretches in October. They've given us a lot of good moments, but the net result at the end is always disappointment. This is a problem. Like, I'll just go back here now and I'll give you some stats to kind of start the conversation. Since May 30th, when this stretch began, they are, as a team, 29th in slugging. We lauded them for their on-base percentage. Well, they don't always deliver with runners in scoring position, but man, they get on base. They're dead last in on-base percentage since the start of the Milwaukee series. They're 30th in batting average, dead last, 29th in OPS. Now, zoom out. Nobody wants to hear big picture. You're still talking about a team that's 9 games over 500. You're still talking about a team that is very much in the playoff mix. They're still 9th in runs per game this season, and they're still 10th in OPS, which almost is impossible to believe that. I mean, that feels impossible.
It shows you the state of the game, right? I mean, that's not just about the Phillies. It's the state of the sport right now.
So here, though, on an individual basis, like when you say, like, man, this team really lacks punch, like, how about all the people that were like, you can't live and die by the home run? I'd much rather live by the home run. Hit some home runs. Like, let's get hot for 4 games and hit 10 home runs and feel a little bit better about this rather than slap here, slap there, feeble ground out, strike out. Like, give me something. This team feels boring and feels lifeless and feels like they're checked out because they don't have any thump. They have no excitement. They have no true, energy in terms of like game changers in this lineup. Like when Harper isn't Harper or Harper's shelved again and Kyle Schwarber is kind of feeling his way through it. Like this team is absolutely inept offensively. I mean, look at this, man. Schwarber, 928 OPS, Harper, 814, fine, whatever. Turner, 800. I'm not going to complain about Trey Turner offensively. Castellanos, 744. The league average OPS this season, 711, I believe I heard earlier today. Yeah. So 686, Bohm, 685, Kepler, 660, Real Muto, 647, Stott, 641, Brandon Marsh, 638, Johan Rojas, 629. And then, oh, by the way, like, let's do the platoon thing, right? We got to get our platoons going. Wes Wilson, 524. And this is awful. I mean, this is truly awful. I know it's hard to hit in 2025, and the state of the sport offensively is down, but this is pathetic. This is absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, it's really bad. And I want to point out something that, I got to, and I'll give credit where it came from. Matt Gelb did a really nice piece that ran in The Athletic this morning. If you have an Athletic subscription, I recommend you go read it. But he pointed out that this year versus last year, Phillies slugging percentages versus non-fastballs. Every player but one is down, and some are down considerably. There's a couple that are pretty much, close to what they were a year ago. But believe it or not, the only one who's up against non-fastballs is Brandon Marsh, who's terrible overall, right? So, but every other regular in the lineup, and this includes Harper, this includes Schwarber, is down versus non-fastball. They're still hitting fastballs. They're still doing a pretty good job against fastballs, but teams are beating them by throwing them a bunch of off-speed.
Isn't that the whole Kevin Long mantra is like hunt the fastball? Like that's what he built his resume on as a hitting coach. Like this is a league in which you must hit the fastball, hunt the fastball, do damage against it. The book became out on the Phillies, and it's not just about going outside the strike zone, but it's that these hitters struggle with spin. And you could talk about decline. You can talk about, in the case of Harper, injury issues. Real Muto's getting older. There's other factors that play into down years and the decline offensively. But I find it terribly concerning that teams know that you can beat the Phillies with spin. You can beat this lineup with spin.
So here's the thing. Here's an interesting thing about that. And I don't know, and it might be worth asking questions down there today, but I don't know what the difference is. So to be honest, last year, in 2024, the Phillies ranked 5th in all of baseball against non-fastballs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was powered by early season performance.
No, but that's the thing. It wasn't. If you look at it, they from August 1st to the end of the regular season, they were at their best against
So then
non-fastballs.
what did the Mets find? Because I actually was looking at this last week. Like, what did the Mets find on him in October? Because
the Mets found Chase. That's what. So the Mets threw non-fastballs out of the zone. So the Phillies were actually doing well, hitting breaking stuff or non-fastballs that were in zone. They were good at doing that. What they didn't do is they were chasing. So as we all know, the adjustment at the beginning of this year was don't chase. Swing at pitches in the zone. And that was working, right? At the beginning of the year. If you recall, it was like they were not chasing pitches. They were not striking out as much. And they may not have been hitting for power, but they were having success. Whatever has happened in the last 3-4 weeks, maybe even a little bit longer, if you really go and stretch it back, they're still not chasing, but they're now no longer having success on non-fastballs in zone either. So what has changed there? And I think that's what has to be figured out.
Well, what's interesting is that, we had the conversation earlier this season. Are they sacrificing some of the slug for an improvement in plate discipline, for an improvement in on base, for an improvement in grinding at bats? And we were hoping that they'd find that middle ground. I have not admittedly seen what the numbers look like over the last 6 weeks in terms of, are they maintaining that plate discipline? Certainly, as I noted, the on base has gone way down. It doesn't feel like it's a matter of massaging one for the other. It might be that this team is just incapable of slugging at this point.
So what I think, and I don't have the numbers to back this either, Bob, but I bet if we looked it up, I get the sense that this team has become a little bit more aggressive early in the count in zone than maybe it had in the past. And I think that you're finding that, and Rob talked about this, and I was kind of perplexed by it because Skeens did pitch into the 8th inning yesterday. But he said, we did a good job of running up his pitch count. You did? He pitched into the 8th inning.
Yeah.
But so when he says that, it makes me think that what's been on his mind is they haven't done a good job of getting pitchers out of the game early. And so I think that means that they're swinging a lot early in counts. And maybe that's where the mistake is right now. Maybe it's feeling the pressure of not doing what. Who knows what the reason is?
Do you go for this premise here? They are all trying to do too much because Bryce is out. This is the thing that Rob always talks about. Like, guys are pressing a little bit. Maybe they're trying to do a little bit too much. Like, that is a go-to for Rob Thompson when things aren't going well. When they don't score runs, it's some of our guys are trying to do too much. Do you buy this? Because at some point, like, no knock. I don't mean this against Bryce Harper, but like Bryce has been out many times in recent years. Like, we've been down this road before. Yeah. Like, stop trying to do too much then. Like, hit better.
I think there's a small part of it that's that, right? I think it's a small part of it that you realize our best player is not in the lineup, so it's incumbent upon me to kind of try and pick up some of that slack. And so then therefore you automatically try and do more.
All right. So then here's this comment from Jerry Martin. Kevin Long has to go. Like, maybe he needs to go. It has to be replaced immediately. And I've even been a Rob Thompson apologist for the last 2 years. To lose, I imagine, lose their jobs. That was going to say. Okay, so let's just kind of attack this part of it. I generally have been pro Rob, and I look at what they have from a lineup perspective and what they have off their bench. And you get into a situation where you get a righty deep in a game, right? And let's say that you have Rojas starting, you have Wes and Wilson starting up against a righty late. So you go, all right, I have to pinch hit twice. I'm going to go Kepler. I'm going to go Marsh. And then those guys don't give you anything. And then vice versa. If it's, I got to go Rojas or I got to go Wilson late, like those guys don't give you anything. You don't have a lot of tactical maneuvers that you can go to in terms of navigating the late innings. He's also terribly short in terms of the bullpen. And I don't task the manager with getting his players to hit. So I think that there's enough that you can sort of defend Rob. Give me a minute, because I know people are like, oh my God, are we really going to defend Rob Thompson today? Just give me a minute on that. But then do you turn to the hitting coach at some point and say, like, okay, and this is what I think you got to try to figure out. It's a long season. You can't overreact to a week and a half. That's what this has been. They're still top 10 in OPS. They're still top 10 in runs scored. They actually, like, as I said, it's crazy, but you look at the big picture, the numbers are not terrible. Granted, they have invested a lot of money in this offense. do you look at the overall performance of these guys on an individual basis and say who's really exceeding expectation? And for that reason, it's professional sports and it may not be entirely fair and we don't want to overreact, but like, yeah, the hitting coach, like we've got to have a conversation here at some point.
So I look at it and say firing a hitting coach, I mean, all that's going to do is like be a shock to the system of the players. And you hope.
I generally think it is cosmetic. I generally think that it is more about let's create some discomfort.
Yeah. That's all it really does. It doesn't change. It doesn't change anything. You want the honest opinion. The honest opinion here is you always have to be good at self-analysis as an organization. And we talk about self-scouting, when it comes to prospects and determining, when you think it's the right time to call a guy up, when it's not. Are they not calling up Crawford because they want to protect him as a prospect in the sense that he's the guy that they'll be willing to move at the trade deadline and they want to keep his numbers really high to make his value even more? Like you have to do a lot of that self-analysis and self-scouting. What they have not done a good job is self-scouting at the major league level. They may be doing a good job of it at the minor league level, but they have not done a good job of it at the major league level. And so now what you have is in essence, you have 3 platoons. And a platoon works if you're getting production on each side of the platoon, right? I mean, that's why you do it. Why are you platooning guys? Because one guy's good against this handed pitching, the other guy's good against this handed pitching, and we put them out there together and they make one good player together. Okay, fine. But if you have 3 platoons that are not working, and in essence, none of them are working right now, then you have 6 players who are playing with regularity who are not contributing to your team.
Right.
And so that is a failure to self-analyze properly coming into this season. And I think that falls on management. You can't put that on the manager. You can't put that on the hitting coach. And I'm not trying to defend them saying, oh, they're doing a great job, rah, rah for those guys. But the real fault has to lie above them because it's the roster construction.
Okay, I can go for that. So here we go. This to me is the essence of where we're at right now. Like this is the primary question. I see this a lot. If Dave Dombrowski does not make the swings that are needed to be made to right the ship at the deadline, if I am John Middleton, I'm handing Dave his bus ticket home for the day or home the day after. Okay. Here's what I don't really get about Phillies fans, and this isn't about like Jerry specifically who made the comment there. You just see the fan base in general say, this bullpen sucks. They have like 1.5 guys that I feel okay about in this moment. The lineup sucks. Like the catcher stinks. He's on the decline. The first baseman is hurt. Bryson Stott, who I want to have another conversation about in a moment, has been dreadful this year. The third baseman doesn't hit for enough power. Center field's a mess. Left field might be worse. It's a lot of problems. But then everybody wants them to go in at the deadline and fix this. So 2 different conversations that I think you can have. Like, one, should they even bother trying to fix this? What do people want? Because if in one end you're saying that the team sucks, then what do you think they're going to do at the deadline to fix all of this and make themselves a World Series contender? If you're really under the belief that this team stinks, which I read up and down everywhere online, all the radio callers, the whole deal, they're like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we going to do? Make 5 moves of impact at the deadline and turn this into a championship team? And I guess the other question becomes like, where do they need to be in order to say like, yeah, let's go for it? Like if the trade deadline were today, Bob Nightingale's stories about how the Phillies are going to be aggressive at the deadline or not, like, would you make a deal of consequence and do something that might really hurt you long-term in order to invest in this team? Like that's to me, like the question that needs to be answered over the next 7 weeks is you get to the deadline. Is it going to be worth it to do something like that? And right now in this moment, they have some questions to answer and none bigger than how hurt is Bryce Harper? Like, because if Bryce Harper is hurt or he's going to come back and be like a grinded out guy, pretty much the guy that he's been all season to this point, like, I don't know if this works. A lot of my projection about the Phillies and this potentially working in October is like Bryce Harper gets going, that he finds another gear. And if he can't find that other gear, I don't know that any of this matters. What do you think about where they're at versus how they play the deadline and where they go?
Yeah, you're not going to get 5 players at the deadline. Like, you're just not. I mean, that's asking a lot. That you would have to basically burn down your farm system to do that. And I don't think that they look at this.
It would make no sense to do that now after not doing it in 22 or 23 or 24 when you seemingly had a better, at least in 24, it seemed like last year they had a much better chance to win a championship than they do as we talk right now. So if you didn't do it a year ago, why do it now? That would be my question.
Yeah, no, but do I think that they're still going to be aggressive at the deadline and try and get pieces? I do think so. I do think that they're going to look for a bat. I do think that they're going to look for 2 bullpen pieces, or at least one, depending on what your starting rotation kind of looks like. I don't know. I think that I don't think it's abandoned ship with this team. Although I do have I did think of, there was a curious comment. I forget who it was that said it. It might have even just been a fan that brought it up online. Is it possible that they didn't tell us this, but the Phillies kind of looked at this as almost like a gap year, in the sense that we're not going to make big changes this year. We're going to let what we have just go. It's a good team. If they do it, great. If they don't do it, we're in a much better position a year from now when we have a little bit more cap flexibility, a little bit more financial flexibility with the salary for these players. We get some young players developed and kind of further along where they need to be, and then really kind of make the big push again in 26. Maybe they didn't say it out loud, and you start to wonder a little bit if in fact that was the approach that they went into the offseason without saying.
Well, when you look at the net result of the offseason, it certainly feels like that. You know, I think that a lot of people assume that, they must have kicked the tires on different outcomes and things didn't materialize and they're holding their powder for July, you know, and I think that was sort of the hope. But I think so much of this for me is about where you're at in the standings and where you're at relative to the rest of the contenders in the National League and what a difference 7 days makes. I mean, part of the reason why I kind of was banging the drum for, look, I know this team is going to struggle at times. They certainly have some shortcomings, but so long as they're 10, 15 games over 500 and, 2 or 3 games within the division, I'm in, like, let's make a run. Let's try to make 1 or 2 moves of big time consequence and see if you can push this thing over the top and really reshape what the team looks like and feels like, maybe more than anything going into October. But if you're going to fall off a cliff, and we're talking about a team that come the end of July can't really recover from this, and they're 2 games over 500, and they're 3 games out of a wild card spot, and they're 9 behind the Mets in the division, then my mentality about how you play the deadline is much different than it was even a week ago.
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, where you're at in the standings at that point certainly dictates what you do.
Here's the question, right? Like, you and I both believe, despite what some others think, that this team doesn't suck. That this isn't a loser team, right? Like, maybe we're just too optimistic. I don't know. I don't think this team sucks. In the last week, 3 of the games which they lost, I watched a Mick Abel deal. I watched Ranger Suarez deal. I watched Christopher Sanchez deal. Like, yes, I know that they lost these games over the last week. It's incredibly annoying and frustrating and makes you want to rip your hair out and throw shit at the wall. I get it. But, like, you're getting those pitching performances. And in time, like, you're going to win baseball games when your pitching is that good. And, oh, by the way, you get Zach Wheeler back, who we haven't seen in like 11 days. So, like, it's still there. Like, that part of it is the most important part of it. And it's still there. And I'm not telling you that they're going to win 105 games, but I just refuse. I can be a complete dumbass, and I don't see this coming. I just don't think a team with that starting rotation continues to fall off the cliff and loses 21 out of 24. I just don't believe it. I don't think that's going to happen. But maybe I'm wrong. But at the same time, where does this team get better offensively without tweaking the roster? Like, that's what I want to ask you right now. You've watched enough of this. It's June 9th. You've seen each of these guys have pretty underwhelming seasons, save for Turner and Schwarber. Castellanos has been batting average is fine. OPS is fine, but he's not a difference maker offensively.
No, he's
So
been what he's been.
he's just whatever. So that being said, like, where's the improvement internally? Like, without an outbound move, like, who gets better? Who has more in the tank than they've given so far?
Well, who should have more in the tank than they've given so far, or
who do you believe might actually? I mean, the answer to should is pretty much everyone.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, when you say who should, I look at every other guy on this roster and say they have all underperformed and underwhelmed.
But like that's the thing. Like, they have, but does Nick Castellanos have more to give this team?
A little bit power wise, I think he does.
Is Kyle Schwarber?
I think Schwarber's giving you what he's giving you, right? Obviously,
I think that either of those center fielders have any more to give you.
I don't, and I'm starting to believe that neither of the left fielders have anything more to give.
The Kepler's killer. I mean, it was a weird fit. It didn't make a lot of sense at the time. Sometimes you almost like want to defer to people and go like, they must know something we don't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the last 2 years, their left field solution in the offseason, they didn't know more than we did, with Merrifield, although at the time, Merrifield I actually thought made some sense.
I thought Merrifield was a great sign.
You and I texted each other right away. And we're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And he's been worse than I thought he'd be.
Yeah. It's just not a good fit. Stott is the guy that I find the most disappointment in, because I think there is more there. And it's just not happening right now. He did say yesterday, and to his credit, I kind of went back and looked at it, and I believe what he said yesterday. He said that he's felt that he's getting a little bit more right field side pop in his swing back. He's less late on his swings in the last couple of games. He has hit some balls hard to the first base, second base, right field. He just hit a few right at guys. So I'm willing to kind of give it a little bit of run for him to say, okay, if you figured something out, maybe, if you didn't get the results in 2-3 games, you will start to get them. Sometimes that happens, but it's a very short leash on that one. Other than that, I don't know if anybody else is going to give you more than what they've given you so far.
Well, it's funny with Bryson Stott because he's been awful, but I'm actually at the point with him where I'm like, play him every day, even though he can't hit or has not hit lefties. He's at 502 OPS against left-handers this year. It's terrible. But Edmundo Sosa's not hitting. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give Bryson Stott every single at bat at second base, and I want you to prove to me over the next 3-4 months that you're better than what this is. Because if you're not better than what this is, then we've got to think about the long term here. Like Bryson Stott this season, Anthony, you're going to, I think, push back on this. I think Bryson Stott is closer to a DFA candidate than he is an all-star at this point. He's been woeful.
Well, he's not. I agree he's not close to all-star, but I don't know if he's a DFA.
Dude, he has been woeful.
But I will say that what really has to change, and I wrote about this, is he cannot lead off anymore. Yeah, I think that hurts the lineup. He has a
280 on base percentage this season out of the leadoff spot.
Yeah, that hurts the lineup more than anything else. Like, I feel like Bryson Stott, because of what he gives you defensively and what he has the propensity to give you at the plate, batting him 8th or 9th is not going to hurt the team. So, like, I'm good with that. I'm good with him staying in the lineup. And I agree with you. He should play against everybody and just be a fixture at the bottom.
Here's what I want to know. I think we're getting to a point where there's some real concern and some real doubt about his ability to perform against left-handed pitching, but let's see it. Like, I want to know at the end of the year, are you a 500 OPS guy against left-handed pitching? Because I need to account for that moving forward. If you can't grind out at bats and find your way on a little bit more than that, then all right, that might change my planning moving forward. They treat him like they treat him like they don't believe there's more there against left.
I agree that they do. That's how they treat him.
So I don't know if the Phillies are telling us what we are slow to see. I don't know. The only thing I'll say for Stott is he has hit with runners in scoring position. I think he's hitting 317 with runners in scoring position this year. One thing I will absolutely always say about him is that he does have a little bit of a feel for moments. He's come up with some big hits for this team.
Yeah, he's got a clutch gene.
He does. I know people kind of like roll their eyes and say whatever, but I mean, I can count quite a few times where he's given them pretty good at bats in big spots. Last week in Toronto, notwithstanding. But
Yeah.
I just look at it and go, like, there's got to be more there. And I agree. If like there's anyone that might have more to give, it's probably him. But they've got to get him out of that leadoff spot. And if he has to go hit eighth or ninth and take a little bit of the edge off, then so be it.
I think you got to turn back to Schwarber leading off, especially with Harper out of the
You're
lineup.
gonna love that.
I mean, well, with Harper out of the lineup, it makes sense at this point.
Well, now more than ever, if Harper's going to be a plus on base guy, but not be a 30, 35 home run guy, that really is the guy that should be hitting the leadoff for the Phillies.
Well, I've been saying
throw that out
years.
there again.
I've been saying it for 3 years, but yeah. I mean, we got to talk about Harper because I'm of the firm belief that this is not a 10-day thing and then he's back.
I don't think so. Yeah,
I think it's a little longer. Yeah, I think it's a little longer than that.
You think this is like All-Star break?
Could be. And the reason I don't want to be a doctor here. I don't want to play doctor in this spot, but I do want to share personal experience. And I've dealt with personally a very, very similar thing to what Bryce has dealt with. Now, I don't know the reason Bryce is dealing with what he's dealing with, which is why I don't want to play doctor here. But what I can say that I experienced, and I know that he's had similar experience with, is I've had problem with my ulnar nerve. And I had it from typing. I would lean on the insides of my elbows from typing, and I would get this really sharp pain in my wrists. Even though the problem was based in my elbow, the pain was in my wrists, so much so that I could not function. I could not type. I could not grab a gallon of milk out of the refrigerator. Like, that's the kind of pain I was feeling. And it was all related to my ulnar nerve. Here's a guy who had Tommy John surgery, right? Okay. Here's a guy who got hit in the elbow last week and said it didn't make it any better because it put all the fluid down into your wrist. To me, this is a nerve problem that only gets better with rest. And my situation went away. It was not like I was like constant suffering 6 months out of the year. It would happen. I would endure it for 10, 12, 14 days. It would go away and then it would come back and then it would go away and come back. Because that's what nerve irritation does, right? I got to think if there's no structural damage to his wrist, right? If they've done an MRI and he's not in a cast or nothing broken in there, there's no torn ligament or anything like that. Because if there were, he'd be getting surgery. That it's got to be nerve related. And so if it's nerve related, the only thing that really makes that go away is rest. And then maybe eventually, if you want to have in the offseason, have that. What I ultimately had was the ulnar nerve transposition where they move the nerve, right? So that it's not as inflamed.
This all sounds great.
I'm just saying, well, first of all, that surgery is the fastest. Like, you recover from that in 2 weeks. Like, in all honesty, I was out of a sling in 7 days and I was back doing my normal thing in like 10, like really. And I'm not a professional athlete. So, I would think that that's something if again, I don't know that's what he has. Right. But it sounds very much like that. And when I watched him shag flies, and I put a video out, you probably saw it on social media over the weekend. He was shagging flies in Pittsburgh. He couldn't move that arm. And I've seen that. I felt that. Like, it's just so it's not in a cast. It's not like, it's just, holy shit, this hurts so much. I cannot even move this arm. That's the pain. It's an inflammation that causes it. It's like the worst pain in the world. I can't explain it otherwise, but you have no structural damage and you're thinking, well, what the hell is wrong with me? And I got to think that that's kind of what he's experiencing.
Well, on one hand, you're like, okay, great. That sort of explains maybe some of the lack of, damage that he's done at the plate on a consistent basis this season. On the other hand, that doesn't sound good. That doesn't sound like a quick and obvious solution, where, hey, come June 20th, he'll be ready to roll and look like the MVP he was a couple seasons ago.
No, I don't think he plays the rest of this month. I really don't. That's and maybe I'm wrong.
You could be wrong, but sure. But like, let's entertain that, because I think it's definitely one possibility. If that were to happen, what does this look like come July 1? Are they able to tread water, or do they just go whoa?
And it's a tough schedule too. Other than the trip to Miami, this is a tough road ahead for this team.
But if you take that evaluation of his health into consideration and what he might be the rest of the season, even when he comes back, and then you look at all the other shortcomings. Maybe the Phillies thought, as you said earlier, that this was a little bit of a bridge year, and they were never going to obviously tell anybody that. But do they, even if that was not the case over the winter, do they get to a point now on, July 1 where there are 5 games over? They have no idea what Bryce Harper is going to give them the remainder of the season. And, oh, by the way, they have all these holes. We're not going to go out and do it. We're not going to go out and make a couple moves. We're not going to do anything. Why subtract even a little bit from the future here?
Here's one from our seeker. Welcome to the program. First comment I think that you've made. It is about 2026. Dump contracts and older non-performers, get some hungry on-base percentage hitters. I do think that there is going to be a real focus on 2026 once we get to the offseason. I think, and that sounds like a no shit Sherlock thing to say, but the reality of it is I do believe that they've looked at next year as things are going to be wildly different with this roster than it is this year, or has been the past. I think that they've always looked at 26 as the year when the big changes are going to happen, regardless if this team won a championship or got to the World Series or missed the playoffs entirely. Like, I think that this was going to be the end of the run for this band, right? Like, I think this was
as it stands now, you just go around the current lineup here. Real Muto, I guess there is a world where there's like a 1 or 2 year deal at a reduced price. He sticks around, but it feels very 50-50 at this point. First base, Harper, obviously here. Stott, you think Stott's their second baseman or shortstop next year, starting opening day?
I think a lot will depend on what happens the rest of this season, but it's possible that I think it's 50-50.
Turner's here, whether he's at shortstop or running around the outfield, who knows, or maybe even second base. Okay. Bohm's not going to be here. No shot. Castellanos, I think it's going to be the same deal. Like, they're going to try like hell to see who would be interested, and probably nobody. And I think he'll probably be here.
Although a 1 year
deal, if you ate some of it,
I think another team would take it.
Okay. Center field?
Neither of those guys.
Left field?
Neither of those guys.
You're talking about the slam dunks are Turner and Harper. I mean, those are the guys.
And I think Schwarber, although Harvey Birdman.
Schwarber, I'm saying is like, Schwarber. Okay. Yeah. Maybe.
Harvey Birdman asked an interesting question, is saying, will firing Kevin Long make Schwarber not want to resign? And that's a good question. I don't think that, I don't think a player like Kyle Schwarber would abandon a team just.
Dude, you got to really love a hitting coach. Like, if you're saying, like, I won't take your money because Kevin Long isn't here. That's a different. I wish somebody. I don't know if my wife is that loyal. Like, seriously. But yeah, I mean, like, look, that's probably a part of it. You know that Turner, Schwarber, Harper, they all have a lot of respect for Kevin Long. I think that's all part of even why he's here now, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, you look at all the work that they might do this winter. I guess that's the question. And that's the thing that really has come more into focus for me. It's like, what do you do at the deadline? Like, what do you do? And like, I look at a player like Mick Abel, who 2 months ago, we would have just said, yeah, throw him in. Anything that you can get me back. And he kind of is the headliner or one of the primary pieces going out. Cool. I'm all right with it. Now you look at Mick Abel and you go like, okay, like, what is the value of this player to our organization, both in the short term and beyond 2025? And I don't know if they see him as a middle of the rotation starter. I don't know if they see him as a long-term transition into a bullpen arm. I don't know if they're just dying to get to the trade deadline because he's given them 2 good months and his value couldn't be any higher. And let's get him out of here and get something in return. Like, I don't know, but I start to look at next season and even the rotation. And what do I have? I have Zach Wheeler. I have Sanchez. I have Andrew Painter. I have Aaron Nola, right?
And you have Luzardo.
And I have Luzardo. So I still have 5. So like, is he just that great insurance policy on that? Or is he a bullpen piece next year? Or is he out of here? Like, and would you want to at this point? Like, I feel like it'll hurt to trade him. Like, you trade McAble now, people are going to go like, damn, you sure? I'm not saying that he's going to be a stud. I'm not saying that he's figured it out entirely, but I think people are going to feel like, damn, that hurt to give this guy up based on what we've seen this season. Like, what is the return that you would deem acceptable for a player like him, given where he's at right now? Is it Carlos Estevez? Is it a rental closer? Is it a controllable piece? Like,
the one thing we learned about a rental closer last year, even though they had to give up 2 decent prospects for him, it was 2 prospects who were pitching at a lower level in the minor leagues, right? I don't think a guy who's shown signs of positivity at the major league level is the price that you pay for a rental closer or a rental reliever, right? So I think if you're trading McAble at this point, assuming that he continues to pitch well over the course of the next month, you better get something of much better value, including having some term left. Like, if you're trading him for a guy, better not be just for somebody who's out of here at the end of the season. It better be for somebody who's going to stick around. And so I think that his value has certainly gone up with the season that he had, both at the minor league level and the 2 starts at the major league level so far. How the Phillies view him, though, is really what we have to figure out. Because I look at it and say, he's been good, but even in his last start, you notice he didn't have the length that he had against the Pirates.
Swings were a little bit better against them. There was some hard contact early in that game. Now, all that being said, he shouldn't have given up a run. I mean, center fielder goes and gets the ball.
Right. I agree. I agree. But I mean, there were signs that were a little bit like, okay, first time maybe you faced a bad offensive team in the Pirates. They had never seen you before. You can do as much pre-scouting in the minor leagues as you want, but unless you face a pitcher, it's a little bit different. Now in the second start, okay, it's a little bit better contact against him. Still didn't give up runs, but maybe the book is starting to get out. So ultimately, do the Phillies look at that and say, major league hitters are going to figure him out and he's not going to be as good as we thought? Or do we look at it and say, if we limit him and make him a reliever, he could be a really good back end guy for us? So like, they have to make that determination. And again, this is where I talk about the self-analysis. Whatever their determination is will determine whether he stays or goes at the deadline. And we'll have to wait and see, are the Phillies desperate, or are the Phillies going to play this as we're thinking 26, 27, 28 as well as 25?
I think if the focus is more long-term than the play is, continue to allow him to start, get more of an evaluation at the major league level, and then you have the conversion to reliever as a safety net, because you think that the arm, I think most people would agree that the arm probably plays in a bullpen role. But if you need that immediate fix, and banking on a late season transition of McAble to plug a meaningful spot in the back end of that bullpen, that's a big ask of him. And so that really, I think, becomes the question. You know, we saw Jesus Luzardo pitch at a Cy Young level for 2 months, basically. And now I think everybody's wondering, can he survive another start? That's an extreme. We saw Ranger Suarez, put together 10, 11 great starts last year and then really struggle in the second half, and some injury stuff was involved there. But again, when it comes to Abel, like I think a lot of people are guilty of this. It's like, wow, look at this. This is great. Give it some time, before you anoint him as a definite solution. The biggest question I have is, can he throw strikes? And I know he's done it at the major league level for 2 games, but he hasn't at the minor league level. So
it'll be interesting to see him against the Cubs tomorrow.
So
Cubs lineup is
that'll be a test. That'll be a test.
That'll be a test for him for sure.
So I don't know. I don't want to go nuts here. I don't want to overreact. I don't want to say this team's dead, shovel dirt on him. I know that some people were hoping that I would do that today, and it would be therapeutic exercise, but It's a really important stretch for them. The next 3 weeks, I think, are going to very much determine their mindset and their overall evaluation of how they should play the remainder of 25. I mean, like you say, that's Captain Obvious stuff, but it's not even to me about the deadline. I think that if they are going to make a move, I think that they'll try to make a move in mid-July. Like, the market is the market, and it's going to progress as it does. And some GMs aren't going to want to make deals until that 11th hour, but I think the Phillies know if they're going to be serious about this and like want to take a swing, they're probably going to have to do it near the top of the activity. Like, I think that they have to throw the opening punch this year if they're going to do something.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair way of describing it too, Bob. I think that,
if I have to pay a 10% tax in terms of my prospects, I have to just give up a little bit more than I want to get pieces back that I think can help me win a championship. If this is really what the thinking is, and I can pay that little extra to get those 3-4 weeks, I might. But if my calculation is that this team isn't going to win a championship, I don't want to see them send out Kyle Schwarber, but I wouldn't be doing a whole lot at that point.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that 100%. And, just to kind of put a bow on the Abel thing. The one thing I really agree with you on it's asking a lot of him, even though they may eventually do this for the end of the season. I was talking with Taijuan Walker yesterday in Pittsburgh before the game, and just talking about the difficulty in transitioning from being a starter to being a reliever and what that entails. And, you're talking about a guy who's got 10 years experience in the league, right? Who knows how to pitch at the major league level and the struggles that he has. And he said, I found that the first time I did it, I warmed up so fast that I was out of breath walking out, onto the mound to pitch. And he says, and that's not necessarily a good thing, right? Like, he says, you have to learn how to pace yourself differently. He says, I'm used to 90 minutes before a game doing my pregame workout, throw like a 30-pitch warm-up in the bullpen, and then I'm out there ready to go. That's when I'm ready. He says, now you have to kind of pace yourself over the course of the game, and you have to figure out at what point in the game you're going to get up and start stretching. At what point in the game you're going to do this exercise or that exercise. And, because you don't know when you're going to be called upon and, how to get your arm ready to throw. So, like, there's a lot of things that he has to learn. And he said he's been leaning on Matt Strom and Joe Ross as guys who've been starters previously who converted into the bullpen on how to do that and all that. And so, you're talking about, again, a guy who's been in the league for 10 years, still trying to figure out, like, what those routines are like. And then also, you can't work on pitches in between starts, right? Like, that's what bullpens are for starting pitchers. Hey,
that's what you wonder, though, of him not having that long time experience as a starting pitcher at the major league level. Certainly that's what he's been prepped to do through his minor league progression, but it's almost like you don't know what you don't know. Like, hey, just go out there and sling it. Maybe that helps. Maybe that actually plays to Abel's benefit. I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? But the argument that I was making is that if it's that difficult for a starting pitcher who's been in the league as long as they have, imagine how much harder it is for a guy who's just broken into the league to do it, right? So it's really asking a lot of a guy to do that. And yes, teams have had success in the past, and we've talked about them in the past. The David Prices of the world and the Adam Wainwrights of the world, they've done this in the past. But I guarantee you for each of those successes, there's probably been 10 failures that we're not thinking of off the top of our heads of guys who teams have asked to do this and it has not worked. So you got to really, really thread that needle. Did I lose you there, Bob?
Yeah, I'm back. Lost you for a second there. Just a second.
Yeah.
Just a second.
That's all. It's all good.
Actually, I think that was Xfinity's way of telling me to wrap it up. I have to get out of here. So you want to do one last thing?
Well, one last thing I think is a classic, an absolute classic this week. And of course, we're going to stay in the division. We're going to go to my favorite team, the Atlanta Braves. How about what the Braves did to Craig Kimbrell?
Yeah. Hey, work your way back up through the minors. Toil in the minors. Come on up. 1 inning DFA. Franchise legend.
To a franchise icon who's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame as one of the best closers in the history of the sport. To do that to him, and after an inning, and look, it wasn't a great inning.
It was a bad inning. He actually, his velocity was way down. He picked off a runner. I think someone else got thrown out. Like, he got away with it. But like,
he gave up a hit, base runner to try to steal, threw him out, walked the guy, picked him off, and then got out of it. Right. So, and his velocity was down. So it was not a great inning, but it wasn't a horrible inning. And it was only one inning in the first inning of the year at the major league level. And it's just like, yep, see ya, pal.
It's crazy because they're the organization that when they do something, you're like, wow, what do they know? Like, they're always ahead of the curve. Like, I wish we were the Braves. And this year, it could not be any different. It's just such an awful look. Baseball decision or not, it's just a horrible, horrible look from an optics standpoint. And their season has just totally gone off the rails. Like, in addition, by the way, like, look at how they've lost their last 4 games. They're all 1-run losses, wild pitches, walk-offs. Like, it's been a disaster for them.
I mean, that's the one thing Phillies fans can take stock in right now. Imagine, I know the Phillies have lost 9 of 10. Imagine if you were losing like the Braves were losing.
Yeah. And Strider the other day, like, again, didn't look good. Velocity's down. Like, that's concerning.
That's the reason I got out on them. Like, I was in on the Braves up until I saw Strider pitch multiple games and said, yeah, dude just doesn't have it right now.
Oh, and by the way, like, no on Kimbrel. No.
Oh, God, no.
It came up in the comments and I was going to put it on the screen. I can't do it.
No, I wouldn't do Kimbrel either. Bob, you know what? I think people are a little disappointed that we didn't get today before we head out. We didn't get the center field sound effect. We didn't get the center field report.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we would have done it after Friday night's game, we could have done that. You know, center field had a big game yesterday. A hit. So no sound effect until next show.
Next show. We're gonna have to wait. I guess our predictions have not been great lately. Obviously, neither of us saw them getting swept by the Pirates. Last thing before we get out of here, what do you think for this Cubs series?
They're gonna win 2 out of 3.
You're probably right.
Yeah,
you're probably right. And I think
they're gonna win. I think they're gonna win 2 out of 3, which is part of the reason I didn't go like full in today.
Yeah, I think it starts tonight. I think Wheeler gives them a great game and they find a way to put up some runs and, get everybody say, see, they're okay.
I think you get a good one from Wheeler and a win. And I think you get a Luzardo bounce back effort. And then now at the end of the week, we're all going to go, well, the Cubs are a good team and they beat them and Luzardo looked good again. Like, I think we're going to go swing back the other way for a few days now.
Yeah.
Just for a few.
I think you're probably right.
I'm not overall super optimistic about the big picture, but for this week, I think that they kind of mess with this a little bit.
It's the one thing that this team always does, right, Bob? They always go in the opposite direction than where you think that they're at that moment, right? Every time they get to the cliff and we're like, this is it, they're done, they turn it around and figure it out. And then when they're going really good and you're like, all right, this team's on their way, then they shit the bed and they go and lose 9 out of 10.
All of that being said, please do not bet on the Phillies tonight. And if you do, I don't want to hear about it. Do not message me like nice call, dipshit, or any of that stuff. I don't want to hear it. You do that at your own risk.
That's right. That's fantastic.
Right. Get me out of here before my Xfinity cuts out again.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Phightin Words. Don't forget you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. But best place is right here on YouTube. Click the thumbs up, ring the bell. You'll get an alert every time that we go live with an episode. And if you're listening in the podcast feed, you want to see us on YouTube, find us at youtube.com/@Phightin Words. And that's when you can subscribe to that there. Bob and I will be back on, we might do a Thursday because it's an off day, right? Am I mistaken? Yeah, Thursday's
I believe we're off Thursday.
Yeah, because we've done that in the past. Like we've done the Thursday instead of Friday. So just stay tuned. It'll be either Thursday or Friday. We'll be back with the next episode and take you into the weekend series with the Toronto Blue Jays.
No, it's a 4-game set actually. Or no, is that true? No, yeah, they are off. I believe.
Yeah, it's 3 with the Blue Jays.
Yeah, Blue Jays.
Thursday's a day off.
There you go.
For that matter, if you look, Bob, they don't play. Like I think they have like 2 Thursday games left the rest of the year.
I don't
think
believe
they're
they play a Thursday in the month of July.
or August, I think it is
Wow.
too. I think it's crazy, right? But anyway, so Bob and I will be in either Thursday or Friday morning. We'll figure it out. We'll let you know. We'll put it out on social media so everybody knows. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great week. And we will see you later this week. Thanks, everyone.